Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Now before I start talking, I just want to note this is going to be a way more serious video than all my other ones, and it's going to be a little more political. Not that my videos aren't already pretty political, but this is going to be a little more political than usual. So a little bit more serious topics. So if you're a little young or you don't really know much about that stuff, you might want to click off of here. But if you kind of know what I'm talking about here and you kind of get the gist, you might want to stay and watch because this is pretty serious and I would like for a lot of people to hear this. So let's get into this. You already know what I'm about to talk about. This is getting ridiculous, guys. Republican therians and furries, or really just Republicans in general, are being treated increasingly worse in today's society, and it's really becoming a problem. Now, obviously, we're going to have people that disagree with us, and that's okay. Not everyone's going to agree with my opinion and my views, but that doesn't mean that you should be rude about it. And it's even getting worse than just being rude. I'm getting actual, people calling me, a really terrible person for my political views, or, just genuinely fearing for my safety. Now, I'm pretty sure I've already talked plenty enough about, transgenders and stuff, and, how I fear for my safety with that, which thankfully President Trump is taking care of all that, so I don't really need to talk about that more than I already have, but, I'm just talking about, us Republicans are, we're being kind of pushed away in this situation, and obviously a majority of furries and therians are going to be Democrats. A majority of them are going to be LGBTQ or whatever, but that doesn't mean that none of them are, and it doesn't mean that you can't be. It is insane the amount of times I've been told you can't be a therian because I am Republican, and that makes absolutely zero sense because being a therian isn't a choice regardless of political opinion. And the fact that my political views gets me so much more hate is just genuinely sad. My own community is putting me down for wanting to have a safer country, and some of them aren't even in America. And again, I completely understand your guys' reasoning. If I was transgender or LGBTQ, I would be scared too. I completely understand how you feel in this situation. But all of this needs to be done. It needs to be done to clean America up and make the country great again. So unfortunately, for once, you just can't get your way. The world doesn't revolve around you. And, I'm more talking about, LGBTQ. You can't always get everything you want, and that's about it. So, obviously, you're going to support your own kind, but it's really confusing in this situation where I am technically your own kind, being a furry and therian. I just have different political views, and I mean way different. But that still doesn't give you an excuse to be rude or call someone a disgusting, terrible person just for supporting Trump. Something that simple. There is no reason at all that anyone should be going against people in their own community because of who they support. It's bullshit. And you can tell this is actually makes me mad because it's genuinely harder to stay in this community and be treated like this by my own kind and not really say anything about it, because obviously I'm saying this right now and I have made a video on it before, but clearly it didn't get out very much because people are still being assholes. But I do want to say thank you to all my amazing supporters. I found so many friends that kind of share my views in that way, and I really genuinely appreciate it. It feels nice to have my own little community going. I love you guys. You guys are awesome. And even those who don't share my political views. For example, Jupiter. First of all, you're just a really lovely friend. Thank you so much for being here to support me. And, you are just the perfect example for someone who is super respectful, but doesn't share my political views, and that's just really awesome. I wish all people could be like that. I just wish all people can just remain respectful, in the same community. We're furries / therians. Like, we should be here to support each other, not drag each other down. That is literally the whole part, the whole concept of a community, keeping each other together, lifting each other up, regardless of our opinions. This is just getting really ridiculous, and I really just need to sit down and really process this, and I just really genuinely needed to talk about it and get it off my chest. And again, I know I've talked about it before, but this really needs to get, spread out there, because this is getting absolutely ridiculous. So, guys, if you can, and if you want more people to see this, please do share. Please spread the word, because more people need to hear this. We need to start being an actual community and stop dragging each other down, because it is genuinely getting harder to stay and, enjoy this community while also being Republican and staying true to my beliefs. And like a not very wise person once said, fear doesn't validate discrimination, or something like that. Just because I support someone as president, that doesn't mean that you should discriminate against me and hate on me for who I support. And just like I am with transgenders, like, if I don't want to be near you, if I don't feel comfortable in the room with you, I am going to walk out, or walk in a different area. And I say this more because I'm thinking about like school, seeing transgenders in school. I'd like want to leave the room. But besides all that, like, if I'm uncomfortable with someone, I'm just not going to interact. But these people are directly choosing to do all this. So I don't really know what else to say on this, guys. Make sure to leave your opinions in the comments, respectfully, please. I'm not even going to take the time to emphasize on the respectfully, because I know none of you are. So just please try to remain respectful in the comments. Thank you so much for watching and hearing my opinion on this. Please share, and I hope you all have a wonderful day, guys. Bye!